Our next session is From Tipping Point to Turning Point, Identifying Support for Journalists in Exile. Please welcome our speakers to the stage.
Well, evening, everybody. Thanks for being here after that incredible, powerful panel. I'm sure, like me, you're feeling like you're ready to roll up your sleeves and go into bat for the profession and in the name of truth and holding power to account. So we're privileged to follow up that panel now. My name is Will Church. I'm the director of the Media Freedom Program at Thomson Reuters Foundation. We're here to discuss from tipping point to turning point. It's an issue very close to Thomson Reuters Foundation's heart. We've been delivering integrated media development and legal programming on these issues, particularly in Eastern Europe, over the last at least 3 years. I'm going to keep my introduction short, actually, because I think we're pressed for time. But let me introduce our amazing panelists. We're joined by, everyone's moved order, sorry. So at the end, we have Laura Aguirre, Strategic Director of Al Araka, the feminist digital media, and also Director of Development at Sembra Media. In the middle, we have Lotfullah Najafezada, founder and CEO of Amu TV, a journalist from Afghanistan, now based in Toronto and DC. And I must mention that just a week or so ago, received on behalf of all Afghan journalists the Canada-UK Media Freedom Award. So we're very privileged to have you here. And also, we're joined by Natalia Belikova, Head of International Cooperation at the Press Club of Belarus, from Belarus, operating from Warsaw. And I must say also, Natalia was very kind to step in yesterday when another panelist was unfortunately unavailable.
We are always happy to give a hand to Russians.
Right, yes. Well, we're very delighted. Lotfullah, if I can start with you, I think everyone in this room knows, as an Afghan journalist, why you're in exile. But perhaps you could start by setting the scene for us, explaining, I think certainly in the UK, we remember the scenes of the American withdrawal from Kabul very vividly. They were very dramatic. What was that like for the media workers on the ground? What was your situation? And what's the situation facing the media now?
Thank you. Well, exiled journalist is something that I try not to describe myself as one, because it has this political connotation. Don't attach any word to journalists. Journalists are journalists, whether they can travel to their countries or if they're not. The moment you attach labels to them, it is going to make their jobs and life more difficult. And Afghanistan was certainly not born with the US invasion and did not end with the US departure. Things have changed, certainly in our line of work. I think we have a Taliban problem that you all know about. But we have an Afghanistan opportunity that is very interesting for us to understand, and how we have been trying to turn that challenge into an opportunity, particularly in the field of media. That is primarily because of the enormous social transformation that happened in Afghanistan in 20 years. Today, under the Taliban's nose, 1,000 journalists are being graduated from journalism schools every year. You have 5,000 journalists or so still inside the country. We have a call-in show on Amu TV, 1 hour live. We're getting between 1,000 to 3,000 calls in just 1 hour. So people are trying to speak. This is an opportunity. This is a culture that has been developed. We moved outside the country to have the freedom to respond to that situation. So our job is not really to go after stories. Our job is to manage the stories that are coming to us. And sometimes I tease my colleagues that it's very lazy journalism. So that is an enormous opportunity that's still there in Afghanistan. My fear is that the Taliban might change that over time with their social re-engineering of the society. We may not receive that 3,000 calls in 1 hour. We might be in a situation that we try to find a source, try to talk to people, and people won't talk to us. And that would be a very, very sad story. So our job at this stage is to make sure those of us who are outside partner with that enormous network of journalists inside the country. They have access, we have the freedom. We combine the two, get the information out, beam it back to the Afghan people via satellite television. And that's how you basically counter Taliban's re-engineering project of the society by simply informing the Afghan society.
Thanks very much. I think some people might be surprised about the sort of positivity here. Like there's potential, but we'll come back to that and about how it actually works in a bit. Natalia, with you, again, we actually remember the videos from after the elections. There was great hope, the crowds on the streets in Belarus. That was 2020. But I understand you guys registered before that, so there must have been something that made you do that. For you, what were the warning signs? What have the trends been, and were you prepared?
Well, I think our warning sign was the election of Lukashenko back in 1994. And everything that followed. Basically, we had several waves of repression against society. Journalism has never been honored in Belarus. It has never operated in a free and open society. It was always targeted by the state. The laws and the environment for operations have always been draconian, and that led to the entire media ecosystem, especially the legacy one, the media, the radio, the print media, TV, they were all controlled by the government. We didn't even have pure Russian media. They were also more or less controlled on the content-wise by the Belarusian government. This sort of, the digital technology sort of gave hope to those media who wanted to still develop, and independent media found their foothold in digital space. This is where they started developing, and the COVID actually brought even greater audiences online. And later on, when elections happened, there was the first moment of hope for many, for thousands and millions of people since the 90s. However, not many of you have probably witnessed and saw on TV all these beautiful protests and thought maybe, you know, they're just back to normal. No. The situation in Belarus is extremely dangerous for journalists. Journalists are outlawed as profession. Media consumption is criminalized. So if you're consuming any information that is not in line with the state authorized line, then you may also go to prison. For you to understand, today another journalist was arrested. He was he was husband of a journalist who is in prison right now for being a journalist, and he was there in Belarus just, you know, meeting with her, helping her with delivering food, clothes, and he was arrested as well today. So the family remains without any support. So the environment in Belarus for journalists right now is draconian, and it's extremely hostile.
Thank you. Yeah.
But because it's back to where we are, and because of all of this, we as a media development organization, we always realize that there's this risk that anything good that happens to our community always risks to fall back into the trap of, you know, authoritarianism and everything. So it was always our backup plan that we hoped never to enact, to work from exile if things go horribly wrong. Unfortunately, it did happen.
Yeah. Again, we'll come back to that. Thanks for sharing. And Laura, you're mercifully not yet in exile, but you are preparing for it. And some might find that funny. So you come from El Salvador. it's the opposite situation of Belarus in many ways, where your president is incredibly popular, you know, and so perhaps explain to people what the situation is in your country, and do the risks, the warning signs that Natalia talked about resonate with you?
Yes, definitely. So, well, I would like to highlight at least two moments that were really important for me, but I want to give some little small context about my country and my personal trajectory. I was the executive director of my media for 6 years until the last December, so I was in charge to think not only in the financial situation, but the safety of my team. And Alaraca is a multi-situated project. The three co-founders, we live in Berlin, in Germany, since a long time ago. So we direct our media from outside of the country. So that is a very different situation from other medias, but for me, it's supposed a big responsibility to think in the safety of my team. And I belong to a generation from El Salvador, and I think a lot of you as well, that we born during the 80s and 90s. And I born when the civil conflict in my country begins. And I was a teenager in the 90s, the happy time, as Daniel in the morning said, no, that we believe that democracy will last forever. And I was a young adult when I start to work with journalists, and I really believe that democracy will last forever in my country. So when Nayib Bukele came in power, I don't know if you know about Nayib Bukele, it's, as Will said, a very popular political leader. The person is very popular in my country, so he came in power in 2019. And in 2020, the beginning in February, he took the Congress. He took the Congress with the military forces. And it was the first time after the civil war in my country, and then I witnessed these kind of things one more time. So for me, it was the first flag that my country, as I knew it, the country in which I grew up, it didn't exist anymore. You know. These kind of acts were new, but even that we hope the best in this moment. But after the pandemic, he took the control of the Congress, he took the control of the judicial system, the electoral system, and of course, he shut down a lot of important institutions to collect and publish public information. And well, the big red flag for me, and the final flag, was November 2021, when he tried to approve a foreign agent law. That's very famous in Russia and Nicaragua. And a lot of colleagues from Nicaragua that already were in exile, they always talk about that they come from the future. They always tell us, right, like that, we come from the future. You have to believe that this can happen. So when we were in November, and in the next week of this day, I don't remember which, the law will approve. So for me, it was a fact that we will have this kind of law in El Salvador. And I remember that I couldn't sleep, I don't know how many days, thinking about the money, how can we will pay all the people in El Salvador, and well, it was really stressful. Luckily, the German corporation made a public statement saying that if this law will approve in El Salvador, the German corporation will leave the country. So the government stopped the law, and we don't have it yet. I think it's very possible that in the future we will have this kind of law, but for me it was the time to prepare ourselves and to have the whole infrastructure that we need just in case.
Can you tell us about that infrastructure? I'd love to move on to, so what does that mean?
The first one, I can say later how was old, but we have several, the main axis of our strategy was first one, be prepared financially. So we decided to create an organization in Costa Rica, legal figure, and in this way we can have like a bank account in another country. Then we start like a mental health strategy permanently in our newsroom. So since 2 years ago, we have a permanent therapeutic psychologist for the whole team. We saw the mental health as something that had to be collectible. And then, that is not solved yet, we start to think what we will do if we have to go to exile.
And then, I mean, just so very quickly, if you can, just like, how did you choose Costa Rica? How do you choose where to go?
Yes,
do you know where to get help from?
Because there is a lot of experiences. We know a lot of colleagues from Nicaragua and Guatemala that already were in Costa Rica, and they knew the steps. So it's very important to have this kind of networks and connection to do it. But we thought as well in Mexico, and United States, but two of them are more complicated.
Yes, exactly. We'll come back to that. Well, if we have time, we'll come back to some of that. But I'd love to maybe talk to you, Natalia, about, do those preparations sound in line with what you were doing, but also how you know, you and your colleagues from the other media you work with have been in exile for a few years now. So what's working? How are you reaching your audiences? How are you staying relevant to them, maintaining trust? Is it technology? What's the...
Yes, I think I would like to say that many of you who think you want to go and work in exile, remember that exile is not the end, it's only the beginning of a totally new life. You will have extremely difficult, you have to rethink your entire processes, your work, because being a media that works for audiences across the border, you will need to think about them. You will need to think strategies. How do you source information from the ground? How you do it safely? For example, in Belarusian case, if you're independent media, you're not foreign agent. You're a straightforward extremist or terrorist. So any contact with you by normal people is also dangerous. So you need to think about these things. You also need to think about tripling costs of production, because most of the Belarusian media have been relocating to EU states, because Belarus borders on one hand Lithuania, Latvia, and Poland. They're EU states. And costs there are extremely high, a lot higher than they're in Belarus. Actually, for Belarusian media, the relocation happened twice. First, in 2021, all of the Belarusian journalists and media were escaping repressions, and they went to Ukraine. And then when the full-scale invasion started, they had to relocate once again. So imagine, within a span of a year, you're relocating your businesses twice. That's very challenging. But what works is to know that you're not alone. Find partners. If you don't have prepared partners from your community, look for other communities. There are plenty of communities almost in every state that provide this support. We have 2 hubs in Warsaw that provide infrastructural services for the media, like meeting spaces, free of charge filming studio. We also work on technological solutions, actually. This is a very important part of what we do. We elaborate IT solutions to help to bypass the digital barrier and to ensure that the information that is being created outside is serving the purpose for the audiences inside Belarus. And you're also providing the space for media that actually have to focus on daily lives, and daily tasks. they don't have the time to think about larger things or, think about strategically what may happen in 5 years and 10 years. Organizations like ours are exactly for this, to create this mind space to think what may happen next. And I think it's time for all of us to think about the future, not just the ones that are in dangerous places, but also the ones that are right now in safe spaces, right?
Yeah.
Like United States may be sitting here, journalists may be sitting here in this panel next year. I don't know.
Awkward all round. Just picking quickly up on what you mentioned about the communities, Natalia, actually. So you talked about how the diaspora community are now, we were talking earlier about how the diaspora community are now giving you a headache because so many people have left the country. That are you meant to be reporting for the audience within the country or for the audience outside the country? Can you?
Yes, most Belarusian media working, I don't want to say also in exile, because they're Belarusian media working for Belarusian audiences. Their only designation is that they're independent, that they're providing factful and truthful information, and it's a challenge to deliver. But I think Belarusian case is different because all of this ecosystem still enjoys trust and reach. This ecosystem has reach inside the country. More than 60% of all of the audience of all this so-called exiled media are inside the country. And we are talking about 2 million people roughly monthly. For you to understand, Belarus is now 9.2 million people. So that's a huge number of people that is reached by independent media. And we also know that they trust them. There is high level of trust, roughly about 20%, but then I think this is more or less with the global trend, news fatigue and, general decline in the trust in media. So from this perspective, I think we are a unique case, being able to retain all of this connection between, those who have left and those who remained. But the truth is that you cannot generate income if you're working in exile, because your audience will not give you money. They're inside, whatever, in a prison. You don't take money from prisoners. And those who have left, there is a huge diaspora that has left. Some say it's roughly maybe 500,000 of people. Their interests are changing. And they don't really want to read this media that are working for audiences inside Belarus because they're not serving their interests. They're writing about some stuff that is not relevant for us, so they're also not ready to support. So it's now a challenge how to keep this media viable financially. I think this is important. And they had made a huge contribution. All our research shows a direct connection between the media you're consuming and also the views you're taking. For example, we've done a testing on the attitudes of Belarusian towards the Russian aggression in Ukraine, and we see a 100% correlation. Those who consume independent media, they do not support the war. It's like 99%.
Yeah. And sorry, kind of picking up on that, and just you talking about how you can play this connection role between people in Belarus. So just quickly, because the restrictions for news consumption in Belarus are so severe, right? For you can't read, you can't share, you can't even read anything your organizations write. So how do you actually keep that trust? Why are they taking that risk essentially?
I think here we are stepping into a huge contribution to modern technology. Luckily, we're not living in, information needs to be handed, person to person. We have technology, and technology in this case is also our partner and our companion. We have elaborated solutions for safe delivery of information from Belarus to journalists outside Belarus. There are, safe chatbots on one hand, and also we have created a system of mirroring of websites that cannot be blocked. So blocking the system of mirrors that we have or we offer would mean block half of Google, which is like nobody will do.
Yeah. I mean, journalists in so many countries now have to be so tech savvy. It's frightening. But Lotfulla, just coming to the situation in Afghanistan, in terms of the solutions of how to reach journalists there, did the solutions, are they the same? Are they different? How does it work for you? Reaching your audience.
Well, I mean, we heard this morning that democracy is in decline, trust in media is in decline, and autocrats are on the rise. And I think democracy is taken for granted in so many countries. And for an informed audience like this one, it's very important to think about solutions and possibilities, how to respond to some of these challenges, whether that is in Afghanistan or Belarus or Gaza or El Salvador. Because if you don't do that, then you're adding to the amount of challenges. There was an enormous sympathy for Yumna, but journalists like her in Egypt, from Gaza, they don't have residency permits. They don't have equipment. They haven't filed any reports in the past 4 or 5 months. What are we doing about it? So I think it brings us all back to the question of how innovative we are. In the case of Afghanistan, we tried our bit as independent journalists that before filing our asylum cases, before doing taking the driving tests, which, by the way, I failed 3 times in Canada, we tried to identify what's possible. And satellite television was one possibility. 19 million people out of a population of 40 million Afghans have access to free-to-air satellite. And the satellite is not controlled by the Taliban. So we thought it's an enormous undertaking, but this is an opportunity. They can block websites, but they can't block satellite television. So we set that up. Yeah. And we're seeing the response now, the figures that I explained earlier. So this is, I think, how you communicate, because autocrats and regimes like the Taliban, they're trying to basically shut down communication. Information out, information in, both ways. So I think there is no sort of universal strategy for everyone. We have to identify possibilities in every single market or country and see how can we respond to that.
Yeah. Natalia, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I also think it's a great opportunity to exchange all these different solutions that we have, because some can also. We also have a satellite that has been launched, also in case internet is being shut down. So we also have the satellite broadcast that has been launched for some future scenarios.
And I want to know more about it.
Okay.
No,
Creating impact here on the stage. So just quickly, perhaps for all of you, maybe start with Fuller. Like we go to these forums talking about media in exile. We've talked about how it doesn't necessarily mean one thing, but in general, very general terms, I'd love to know your thoughts on. Perhaps it's a bit existential, but what's the role of media in exile? Like, how long does it go on for? Is it? Are we here forever? Are we looking for regime change? Are we having impact? I think from a donor's perspective, for instance, is it worth it?
I love that question. Because if you attach words like exile, then you have missions, such as regime change, advocate, being an opposition media. And then you are vulnerable to foreign policies of countries. The United States, where our TV channel is based, they deal with Iran differently than with the Taliban. So an exiled Iranian journalist is getting different messages from the State Department than an Afghan exiled journalist. What is important for us, I think for all of us, is to stick to the principles and the ethics of journalism. Our job is not to do regime change. Our job, in my view, is not to be opposition media. Our job is to inform citizens, let people decide for themselves. And that is how I think we protect our profession, and at the same time, we inform our audiences in a free and fair manner, an unbiased manner.
Yeah. Natalia, you're nodding your head.
I can add to that. I totally agree. I also have a proposal to look at journalism as from the angle or through a lens of public good. Journalism is something that is serving all the people. It has something in it that serves all sorts of populations, and it plays a crucial role in preserving this balance of powers everywhere. So it's time to think of a more strategic approach to media, and media also requires lots of training, lots of education. It is not true that everyone can be a journalist. All these bloggers, influencers, some of them could be extremely good, but they're not trained. They're not working with specific cases. So I think I would like to recall the declaration that was adopted by OECD earlier this year about treating media and professional media, especially those who report on political and social issues, as something of having public interest and serving the public good. And once we take that approach, then we will look at the entire industry through a totally different lens, and then we will come up with different solutions.
Yeah.
Well, I totally agree. I just want to add two things. One of them is that we are not exotic objects. What is happening to us can happen in every country to everyone. So we come to from the future. So please be very aware about that. And the second one is something that we implement in our preparation plan. And it is that we change the narrative about ourselves as journalists. We don't see each other as this isolated hero that is telling news to the people. It's not like that for us. I don't know how long will be the regime in my country, but I'm sure it's not forever. No. So for my team and for me, we are not anymore just we are not telling stories. We are witnesses the time. We are witness of something that we have to tell for the future generations. So we see each other as this witness of the time. And I think that is very important because we are the source of information, the contra-narrative for the future generation. And that is what gives me hope.
Thanks, Lara. I mean, unfortunately, we have to wrap up. There's so much to talk about here. There's so much to be inspired by and hopeful for. And I hope that's a suitable place or a suitable feeling to take away at the end of day one of this conference. When we talk about media in exile, often we use a language about the precariousness of the profession. But I'd like to think that our panelists here demonstrate or are testament to the resilience of the industry. So please thank them, and we'll hand to Antonio.